What's up guys, Justin here with the SketchUp Essentials for iPad. So in today's video we're going to talk about how to use the paint bucket tool in order to add materials to your models inside of SketchUp for iPad. Let's go ahead and just jump into it. Alright, so in this video we're going to talk about how we can use the paint bucket tool to add materials to your objects in SketchUp for iPad. And so note that when you tap on the paint bucket tool, what it's going to do is it's going to pop up a little window on the right hand side of your page for materials. You can also access that just by tapping on the materials function right here. And so if we scroll through what's available, note that right now it really only has some colors. We'll talk more about that in a minute. That's only showing colors that are currently in the model. Let's say that we wanted to add our own color. So what we can do is we can come in here and we can click on the plus button. And we're just going to add a color and we're going to call it blue. And notice how you can come in here and you can adjust the color by clicking on the little button right here. And so let's say, for example, that we wanted to add one of these blues. We can just come in here and we can make that adjustment. You could also use the sliders in order to pick your own color if you wanted to do that. So notice how I can use my pencil in order to pick a color. But we're going to go ahead and tap on OK. And then we're just going to go into our model with the paint bucket tool active, and we're just going to tap on faces like this. And notice what it's going to do is whatever material you have selected, it's going to apply it to a surface. So notice how I can select different materials and apply them to different surfaces inside of my model like this. And so these are currently colors that we're applying in here. Now note that there are some tools in here designed to make this a little bit easier. So for example, let's say that this entire box over here was this kind of like teal turquoise color, right? And let's say we wanted to change this entire thing to a different color. Well, instead of going through and picking like this gray and then doing all of these individually, there's tools over here that can help with that. So notice how if you click on this or if you tap on this, there's different tools designed to let you do different things. So the first one is object faces. And so what that's going to do if you select that is that's going to replace all of the faces on this object that have that color applied. So if I select that, right, and then I click on this gray material, notice how it's going to replace all of those different materials like this. And so what that means is that anywhere on this object where the material is that I'm replacing, it's going to replace all instances of that material. So if we were to have that active and we were to do that over here, notice how, like if I put the white material on here, for example, notice how it's going to replace all instances of this material right here. Now that just has to do with if they are on an object like this. Now, let's say, just for this discussion, okay, and so let's say we have a surface like this one, and let's say that we wanted to do this a little bit differently. So let's apply this yellow material to some faces like this, right? And then we'll put one yellow material over here. And then in between, we'll use this kind of teal color again. Okay, so now instead of using this option right here, right, which would replace all of those different materials. So if we had this first modifier toggled on, the object faces, notice how that would replace all instances of this material. However, in this case, let's say that we just wanted to replace the ones that are touching each other, right? What we could do instead is we could use this option for connected faces. And so if I do that, notice how, say I wanted to apply this brown material in here, I could tap on this surface. Well, notice how it's only going to apply that material to the surfaces that are actually connected over here, but not to this one because it's not actually connected, right? At no point does it touch the faces that these other ones have with that material applied to it. So that one can be used to do the connected faces. Then you've also got this option over here for all faces. And so what that's going to do is that's going to find all the faces in your model and replace them. So if I come in here, tap on this blue material and say I want to replace this brown with the blue, notice how with all materials active, what that's going to do is that's going to replace all instances of that material in your entire model. So you can use those in order to quickly replace different kinds of materials in SketchUp for iPad. Now, let's talk a little bit about materials that have textures applied to them, because we've talked about colors so far, right? But now we want to talk about materials with textures. And so if you've used the desktop version of SketchUp, you know that it kind of has a built-in library of materials that ships with it. Now, things are handled a little bit differently inside of SketchUp for iPad, probably because of system limitations, right? They want to keep the app size small. So instead of using those texture materials that are over here, what you can do instead is you can click on this button right here. That's going to take you into the 3D warehouse. And the 3D warehouse is going to have a lot of those materials that you're familiar with in here. So these materials are inside of the SketchUp 3D warehouse, and you can use them, or you can download them in order to use them. So let's say, for example, that I wanted to add some brick to my model. Well, there's a collection in here of brick cladding and siding textures, and I can download those into my model. Notice how this shows you the file size of what's going to be downloaded when we do this. But if I click on download right here, that's going to import those materials into my materials list over here on the right hand side of the page. So now I've got all of these different siding materials in here, right? And all this is doing is this is now showing me all of the materials that have been loaded into my model. But what I can do is I can take these materials and say that we wanted to use maybe like the rough brick or something like that. I can select that and apply that to a surface like this. And so notice how the rough brick is a little bit different than the colors because it's actually repeating a image on this surface like this. And so what that does is that allows you to use an image file to basically show materials inside of your model. Note that you can tap on this material right here in order to adjust it. So say, for example, that you brought this in and you didn't like the size of it. Well, what you can do is you can come in here and let's go ahead and turn on my keyboard real quick. You can come in here and you can adjust the size of the material, which is going to adjust the size of the texture in your scene. So say I wanted this to be 8 feet wide. If I hit the enter key and click on OK, or the enter button, notice how that's going to resize your texture material inside of SketchUp. So you can use this in order to adjust the size of your materials if you decide that you want to, change the size of the materials that are applied to your objects. I'm going to bring this down maybe like a 5 foot and hit OK. And so say now that we wanted to add some shingles, I could come into my materials right here and we're going to go look for roofing textures. We're going to go ahead and we're going to bring those down. So I'm going to click on the download button right here. And notice how my roofing textures are being added down at the bottom. So now I can use this to add things like shingles to my SketchUp models as well. And so one thing to note is you can go into the 3D warehouse right here, and let's say a model has a material that you like, right? So let's go back to the overall 3D warehouse. So I'm just going to tap on this button right here, and let's go ahead and let's just open up one of these, maybe these John Luttrop models. So we'll open up this first one right here. You'll notice how within this model, say I liked one of these textures. So say I like this stone texture, right? I can actually tap on the materials over here on the right hand side of the page, and that's going to give me the ability to download any of the materials that I like from this model. So notice how as I scroll through here, I can see all of the materials that have been applied to this model, and we want to go look for that stone material. And so I'm not sure if this is that material or not, but we're going to go ahead and pick it. Notice how I can click on the option for download. When I download that, that's going to import the material from the model that I had selected and add it to my library so that now I can apply it to different surfaces. Now that's more of a wood floor material, I think, but it does give you an idea of how you can download other materials from the 3D warehouse. And so let's say we wanted to download a material. Like this, for example, is from a website called Polyhaven, and this is just an external textures website. And so let's say we wanted to bring in maybe this older brick material right here, so this castle brick. So I'm going to take this and I'm going to download it as an image. And I'm just going to bring the size down a little bit. You don't want to go with large texture sizes. And in this case, I only want the diffuse map. I don't want the other maps because those are for rendering. We're not worried about that with SketchUp. So, and I would recommend going with the smallest size just to keep your performance okay inside of SketchUp for iPad. But I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to download that image. And so what it's going to do is it's going to open this up. And then I'm going to do an add to photos. Now it's in my photo library on my iPad. And so what I want to do is within SketchUp, I now want to add a texture. And notice how it's the first one that shows up on my photo roll right here. So this is an external image that I've selected and brought in. And so let's go ahead, let's rename this. And notice how now that shows up in my material list. Well, that means that I can take that material, I can select it, and I can apply it to this surface. Now notice how it came in too small, so we want to go ahead, we want to bump this size up probably by a factor of 5, or maybe a little bit more. See how I can use that in order to bring in external textures directly into SketchUp. And so the last tool I want to talk about is the sample tool. And what the sample tool does is it allows you to quickly select materials from inside of your model. So notice how when I activate this and then I tap on a face, what it's going to do is it's going to select that material from inside of my model. It's also going to make it the active material right here. You can see this on the little dot. And so you can use that to quickly select and apply materials from directly inside of SketchUp for iPad. All right, so that's where I'm in this video. Leave a comment below. Let me know what you thought. If you have any questions about materials, I just love having that conversation with you guys. As always, thank you so much for taking the time to watch this, and I'll catch you in the next video. Thanks, guys.